With the flick of her pen, she writes,
Hello friends, we're back with another chapter of The Stallion Returns. There's a spooky little wind blowing through my window right now, a little whistling wind, as we have chapter 17. The Stallion returns with a warning. Safely back home and up resting in her room, Pamela began to recover her senses. Amber brought her a tray of delicious treats that Marguerite had been making ever since she heard that Pam was coming home. Marguerite had had a bad feeling about that spa trip ever since Pam had brought it up, but Marguerite was doubtful about bringing up her intuitive feelings about things with Pam. Twice she'd mentioned a prophetic dream she'd had during her morning meeting with Pamela, and both times Pam had dismissed her feelings with the back of her hand. What Pamela didn't realize was that Marguerite came from a long line of very powerful Celtic witches, and in the old country, her clan was sought out for their intuitive powers, spells, and healing abilities. But Marguerite, being very shy with herself, hid this from everyone, including her Thunder Rose family, lest they decide that having a spooky house manager might just be too much to bear. But Marguerite had seen something worthy of repeating to someone at the ranch. Maybe Mr. Edgar, she thought, would have an open mind enough to be able to see what she'd seen with a deeper clarity. On her walk up from parking her car early in the morning just before dawn, Marguerite had stumbled upon a strange sight just outside the liminal space of the far front pasture line leading up to the main house driveway. Off in the distance, but just close enough to hear, a dark stallion whinnied and snorted, stamping his hooves into the ground, and looking very powerful, it had reared up on its hind legs and come down hard on something. That something made a strange squishy sound as the stallion reared upon it again. Marguerite thought maybe the horse had come across a snake or something else that threatened its path back to the stables. But just as soon as she heard it and saw the powerful horse rise up, then it was gone like a cloud of gray smoke. There was no way in holy heck that Marguerite was straying off the driveway and out into the tree line to see what that was. The last thing she'd seen before the black stallion disappeared were two gray, glowing, ghostly eyes that stared right into her soul. With a shiver down her spine in the cool, early autumn air, she'd almost sprinted up onto the back porch of the main house. She made a sign around herself with her own protection sigil and said an incantation to protect everyone else. But she needed more than sigils and incantations to figure out what this was and why these strange ghostly happenings continued on in this space. She decided to work up her courage to talk to Edgar with a special courage tea. After taking a few sips of the enchanted brew, she felt much better and decided to talk to him after he returned home from his patrol ride around the ranch. Ooh, black stallion showing again. So I'm going to go right into my, commentary about this chapter. I channeled it a couple of days. Remember, we did a start over. So this is part 2 of The Stallion Returns. And last chapter, I think we were talking a lot about demons and dark forces. And I really feel like, bringing Pam home and Pamela and Edgar kind of going through that weird, dark, shadowy, crazy thing with the stigmata. And now we come to Marguerite. And every now and then, the Spirit Friends of The Stallion Returns gives us a little bit of a deeper dive into who Marguerite is. So Marguerite, if you have, or even if you haven't heard, if you haven't read Moxie and Roses or heard Moxie and Roses, which the audiobook is out there on the channel, as well as the ebook is free to read. And now with The Stallion Returns, we go into a little bit more of Marguerite in the first book, but still it's a little bit like we don't really still know where she comes from. We know she's been with the family for a while. with the Cartwrights for a while, and we know she like is very intuitive in knowing like what everybody wants, like a earth angel, and like a mama bear or whatever. She's always caring for everybody with her delicious creations. They always sound so good when I channel them. I wish Marguerite would come to my house and make these dishes for me, and she's always in touch with what everybody's where everybody's at throughout their day. Like, oh, so-and-so's hungry, I should take them something. So, and what we don't see so much about her is her intuitive side, her witchy ways. It's there, but like I said, she's like kind of hides it from people, afraid of what they're going to think, afraid of what, and just, my own like personal opinion, like, oh my gosh, there's so much going on at this ranch that's spooky and weird. How could she not be uniquely herself there? We've got a medicine man, coming in with his medicine bag and doing these shamanic journeys. And we've got the Screech and all these weird, the box with the cross on the lid just pops up and opens up and all sorts of who knows what comes out of it. I find it odd that Marguerite still does not feel enough of herself to share that side of herself with these people who really seem like they're her, they're not her blood family, but they're like her extended family. And the only reason she doesn't live at Thunder Rose Ranch, even though Pamela really wants her to live there and be a part of the family, is because Marguerite is scared about something she saw in the woods. And we still, she saw something scary in the woods in book 1. And ever since she saw whatever that was, she decided no way is she going to be there. And, which is interesting because it seems like she has these powerful spells and incantations and sigils that she comes from, as we're just finding out here in chapter 17. She comes from a very, very powerful line of like ancestral witches who were sought out for their intuitive power, spells, and healing abilities. Celtic. So I always saw Marguerite as like this little like Irish, grandmother figure or whatever, or like this little lady from Ireland who would kind of come in with her fairy, crosses and her hagstones and her, like earth magic and, her delicious cooking skills, all the scones. Her scones are so amazing. And I feel like she goes back and forth. I really almost want to see Marguerite as like a spin-off in some way, to dive deeper into her. But in this chapter, it looks like, I like how it says, but Marguerite, being very shy with herself, hid this from everyone, lest they decide that, they might not want her around. So I think, with the overall metaphor of the starting over of the second part of this book, how I not delete it, but I archived the whole rest of the second half of this book, the original version, and I started over. I had the courage to start over. I'm like, I don't care if it's already out there and it's published, and people have seen it and they're like, what the heck was that? I just pulled it, and I'm just going to re-channel the second part of this because Spirit's saying it's time to like do this the right way this time. And so trusting your guidance, whoever you are that's listening to this, we said this was a fun audiobook as well as a healing workbook. And so the healing workbook side of this is saying that whenever you come to this chapter, no matter whether you've heard all the previous ones or not, this is your time to stand up for yourself and believe in yourself, even if it's hard, even if it's feels, shaky. I'm interested to see. She made herself some courage tea, and lately I've been making a lot of little like enchanted drinks, and crystal infused water and spells. And so I'll tell my son, like, I'll make like creativity cocoa, and then I'll tell my son, do you want some hot chocolate? And he's kind of like, is it enchanted? I'm like, well, yeah, of course. And he's like, sometimes he will, and other times. But he kind of knows sometimes to ask with some of my drinks. I've made courage tea before, and so I'll be like, this is courage tea. You want some? Just take a sip of it. It's got a very strong, it's got a very strong spell for you to have courage, So working your magic and having fun with it too. I'm interested to see, though, she drinks this courage tea and she sees the black stallion. And I'm still not quite sure. I have not really gotten into the channeling and the spirit of it enough yet to be like, is the black stallion just like a metaphor for everybody's shadows here on the ranch? Or is it really a ghostly horse that's meant to, like, terrorize everybody? And in essence, is that not just one and the same? Are your shadows not just some ghostly demon that's here to kind of terrorize you until you deal with it? And maybe this is a metaphor for all of that, The screech in book 1, I really felt like was a dark outside entity that was threatening everyone. It was so spooky and scary. Even to me, when I would channel it, I was like, I can't get too scary. And the spirit will help me and will channel in some stuff that's just right outside of my comfort zone. So I feel like, maybe these kinds of topics are just either right outside of your comfort zone to be more open about, or maybe you feel like you being more who you are is right outside of everybody else's comfort zone. Like, oh, if I show more of who I am, like for me, I'm like, if I label all there's nobody here but me and my son and my dog, and he is full on, on his my son's full on his spiritual path too. And he sees me, with the wands and the enchanted drinks and anything. So it wouldn't be anything there, but, would you have the courage if there's somebody who is outside of your inner circle to be like, want some enchanted spell tea or whatever, or would you be, oh my God, this truck just went by that said TC Energy, like my name, TC, Tammy Lynn Chambers. That's funny, TC Energy. Would you have the courage to be more yourself? And I would say, it depends on who you might be talking to, too. I mean, sometimes you do have to have discernment, and you're not, just out there being all crazy. You have to sometimes be careful in the 3D world and be a little discerning. But if there's people that you want to get close to, or that are close to you, and maybe you have not shared the real, true you with them, I think this is a chapter that kind of is giving you a gentle nudge to get out there and be more of who you are out in the world. Because not Pam, this is Marguerite. She drinks the tea. She's a little scared about what she saw. She does these incantations, but I don't know. And she really does like Edgar. I think she has a secret little crush on Edgar, although she would never act on it. She's too honorable a person, Marguerite, to act on her little Edgar crush. But the fact that she is going to feel comfortable to go talk to him, I'm interested to see how this conversation is going to go. And, Edgar, being super intuitive himself, I'm sure he already knows, Marguerite, you're just hiding who you really are. But he's never going to come out and say that to anybody. So maybe there's going to be some sort of little alliance here between Marguerite and Edgar. He needs some help battling these demons on the Thunder Rose. And, Pamela, she's got some more work to do on her spiritual journey. She's more working on herself right now, and not so much. She's more working on some other things. So maybe she is on a spiritual journey, but it's a little bit of a different one. She's not so much like, oh, I'm a witch, or I'm a star seed or whatever. She's more just doing inner work on herself, on her own self-esteem, her self-confidence, this love in her life. I think this relationship for her and between her and Edgar is her spiritual work right now. Not so much coming out of the closet about, who she is, about, whatever she might be, a fairy or whatever, Amber really wants to be an apprentice to Edgar. Amber's her daughter. She's 18 years old. She's just opening up to her spiritual journey as of the last book. And Amber really wants to help out, but Amber doesn't have a lot of experience. Amber's just kind of flying by the seat of her pants. Wow, this sounds interesting. What's in this medicine bag? What does an eagle feather do? She's just just starting out. Where I feel like Marguerite, through her ancestral bloodlines and probably through many past lives is very powerful and needs to open up more to who that is. She's not a senior woman. I've in physical age, maybe she's like in her 50s or 60s. I would put her kind of like somewhere maybe like in her 50s, maybe. And she's just so happy to be serving, and her service work right now is serving the Cartwright family and serving Thunder Rose Ranch and the ranch hands, and keeping everybody fed and happy. But I want to see Marguerite become more of herself too. So in terms of the divine feminine in this book, they've got some work to do. The Thunder Rose gals have work to do on themselves to become more fully who they are. Amber, it's so good to look this. Amber, the maiden, Pamela, the mother, Marguerite, the crone, are all represented in this book, but they all need a little bit of work to fully come into their power. Moxie's another maiden, and we haven't even touched on her. She hasn't even shown up here. And she's kind of an outsider also coming into the Cartwright clan, and a stripper at a weird, posh nightclub or whatever. It's very strange, the thing about this club. But Moxie being some like secret weapon that we're not even really sure what all Moxie's about. Is Moxie the true like Empress energy, the true divine feminine who's fully open to her spiritual powers? Is she some sort of like ascended master in disguise? Again, I've Moxie's another one who's a little bit of an enigma on the ranch. And the fact that an enigma, I got chills. The fact that when the wooden box with the cross on the lid comes around, a lot of what comes out of it is divine feminine energy. A lot of the Madonna, the Mother Mary energy. I have yet to see a divine masculine. Did Jesus come out one time? I can't remember. I'd have to go back. But I see more of like divine feminine energy coming out of the box, like just trust. I'm here to show you stuff, like very intuitive. So I would say, and we're recording this at the beginning of September 2024, right, heading into the autumnal season, into the spooky season, into the Samhain season, and the witchy, spooky, autumnal vibes. Now's the time, like to embrace your unique qualities and play and have fun and have courage to be more of who you are. And, there's days when I'm like, man, if I had a real pointed hat, I would just be wearing it outside, right? There's someone, It's a Charming Life is one of my favorite YouTube creators. Her and her husband, they're both artists. They live in Sleepy Hollow. Is that in Rhode Island? Up in the United States, the one with the headless horseman. And she has the best little pointy witch's hat, but it's like a hat that is also just could be a hat, but looks like a witch's hat. I love it. She got it off of Etsy, I'm sure. There's somebody there that did it. So amazing. But yeah. And if you live in one of those areas, where it's more in tune to be like, be more of who you are. Glastonbury, Sleepy Hollow, Salem, Massachusetts, Sedona, Shasta, these places where it's more the norm to be spooky than not, or silly, or who you are, or fairy, or whatever, those are the places. It's like, I want to go there. That's where I feel most at home. But anyway, let's just see where this goes next. The next chapter that will come up is chapter 18, which is a Raptors gang member comes by for a visit. And we had this weird backstory going on with the Raptors clan and the rat on the door and all that. So I don't know where that's going to go in this version 2 of The Stallion Returns, but hopefully I will see you there for another exciting chapter of mysticism and magic and fun and upliftment and empowerment and healing. Until then, everyone, take care.